fish across the line, so.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to a special meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Today is Tuesday, October 4th. The time is 3 p.m. And let's go around the table here and introduce ourselves, please. I'm Mayor Bob Severance.
Jim Campbell, City Council.
Danny Pickell, Mayor Pro Tem.
Joel Servadius, City Council.
Steve Powers, Director of Development Services.
Joe Stowell, City Engineer.
Kathy Rosen, Public Works Director.
Rich Tiles, Public Works.
Sandra Place, Public Works. Erica Wassinger, City Council.
Thank you. Today's, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we have one item to discuss today. Our meeting is scheduled to go until 5 p.m. or 2 hours from now. Discussion items are budget presentation, Public Works. Wouldn't you know it?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We have a lot of different topics to cover today, so I'll try to keep things as brief as possible. So we are here to talk about some of Public Works budget proposals for fiscal years 17 and 18. As we go through this, there are some things I think we should all keep in mind. In the next 7 years, we have at least 7, probably more, supervisory employees who are eligible to retire. And there are several other long-term employees who are also eligible, which means we really need to plan for succession so that we can ensure a seamless transition and transfer of that knowledge, because we will have a huge brain drain, because I'm having one right now. So I've been working with administration and HR on putting together a plan. This plan would provide career growth opportunities for existing employees. One challenge that we face, and this is a nationwide challenge in the public works industry, is there is a shortage of qualified or even interested applicants. So we've got some challenges ahead to recruit the next generation of public works employees. I know the American Water Works Association has started a campaign to recruit young people into the water and wastewater fields, and so we're looking at what other agencies are doing for public works as well. This succession planning gives us an opportunity to restructure our department to create a better organization to move into the future. The restructure will be phased in as retirements occur. However, that does create some complications in our organizational chart and structure as we move forward, because the retirements will be staggered, and so the transition is going to take time to fully implement. There are several different divisions and budgets that Public Works is responsible for. The parks, which we talked about last week, equipment rental replacement and replacement fund. There's the shop facility fund, which also includes our engineering division, water, wastewater, solid waste, storm drain, streets. And then in this budget, we also have a new fund that we'll be managing, and that is the 325 fund for Windjammer Park improvements. Today's topics, we already talked about parks. We're going to start off with equipment rental, the operation and maintenance and replacements, our shop facility, solid waste, storm drain, water, wastewater, the wastewater treatment plant construction, that is a separate fund, and then Fund 325 for Windjammer Park improvements. So I thought we'd start with equipment rental. Chief Merrill talked a little bit about this last week in his presentation for the fire department. And equipment rental touches every single city department. So there is a line item in every city department's budget for equipment rental. And so I thought it was important to start with that. So what is equipment rental? The Washington State Auditor has a publication out called An Overview of Equipment Rental and Revolving Fund. And they define equipment rental revolving funds, also known as ER&R funds. They're established to provide equipment rental services within local government. They increase the government efficiency by giving the entity a way to allow expensive equipment and supplies to, in essence, be rented to the entity's other departments. These departments are internal service funds and should operate at zero profit. The equipment ranges from computers to police and fire vehicles, heavy road equipment, and specialized high-voltage trucks. So that's from the state auditor. Cities in Washington state with a population of more than 8,000 are required to have an equipment rental fund for the operation of the street department. So we are required to have an equipment rental fund. That fund may be expanded to include other services to other departments. City of Oak Harbor's equipment rental fund was established by ordinance in 1998, and it applies to all city departments. The code gives oversight, general oversight to the city administrator, and the city administrator then is responsible for providing the rules, regulations, and policy direction. There was an official policy that was adopted in 1998, and council has the ability to change that policy by holding a public meeting and adopting a resolution. This just talks about what our code says. It basically says that there is an equipment rental fund, and it applies to all city offices. The equipment rental policy that was adopted delegates the day-to-day oversight responsibility to the Public Works Director. There is an internal service fund for the operation and maintenance costs, and that's called 501, Fund 501. And then there's a long-term fund for replacement, and that's Fund 502. It was originally used for vehicle and equipment replacement, but it's been expanded over the years to include hardware and software, our computer hardware and software, our fuel island, building amenities. For example, at Public Works, we have our HVAC system in equipment rental. We put money aside for eventual replacement of those facilities. Our flashing school zone lights, our sewer lift stations. We've got sealing of our parking lot included, so we're putting money aside annually for those kinds of things. The equipment rental policy also addresses how we recover our costs, how we go about replacing vehicles and equipment, any additions to the fleet, how we go about speccing our vehicles and equipment, standardization of our fleet, right sizing, and disposal, and then our central equipment or our motor pool, and how all of those are managed. We have 2.5 full-time equivalent employees. We've got 2 full-time mechanics and a part-time or seasonal employee. They maintain all of our rolling stock, generators, trailers, boats, and various miscellaneous equipment. So they've got quite a load for 2.5 FTEs. Cost recovery, the way we do this, and again, Chief Merrill mentioned this, Sandra takes a look back at the last 5 years of costs for a piece of equipment or a vehicle. And she looks at the direct costs, which include insurance, fuel, parts, labor. Then she also looks at the indirect costs or the overhead, employee leave, the cost to run our public works facility, the staffing, administrative staffing of the public works facility, and then some city hall staff such as legal, city administrator, and the finance staff. And then that gets distributed out based on each vehicle's average of the last 5 years. So Fund 502 is the replacement fund, and replacement contributions, like I mentioned earlier, vehicles, equipment, lift stations, building amenities. 50220 is where we budget for the computer hardware replacement. And so every city department is going to have a line for 50220, and that's the money that gets transferred in for their computer and hardware replacements. And then 50230 is for computer software licenses and upgrades. The funds in 502 are for replacements only. If a department needs a new piece of equipment or a new vehicle that has not been in the fleet, they're required under our policy to budget for that out of the initial purchase of that out of their operations budget. Then we begin planning for replacement, eventual replacement of that piece of equipment as soon as we purchase it. And the contributions are based on the estimated service life of that piece of equipment. We look at each piece of equipment every year and look to see, are there any unusual or unexpected costs? Is it deteriorating more rapidly than we had anticipated? Does it still meet the city's needs? And then we adjust the schedule and contributions accordingly. And an example of this, you recently approved the purchase of 2 Vactors. The Water Division Vactor, all of the replacement funds, what we thought would be all of the replacement funds, were contributed by the 2009-2010 budget. So water stopped contributing to the replacement for that piece of equipment. The wastewater, we extended the life of that piece of equipment, so we reduced their annual contributions over time. So what you'll see now, because we're purchasing new, we've got a new estimated service life, those contributions for water will start up again. So you'll see an increase in the 502 line item for water, and wastewaters will increase because they had been reduced. One thing to remember is our policy says that any purchase out of the replacement fund in excess of $10,000 requires city council approval. And that's more than you just approving the list of replacements in the budget approval. We actually come to you and ask for authorization to purchase it after. So you've seen those agenda bills on your council meetings in the past. And if for some reason something's not on the list to be replaced during a budget cycle, if there's a catastrophic failure of a piece of equipment and we have to replace it, we always come to council for that. When we look at replacement, we try to standardize our fleet so we can only stock one type of part. It's easier for our mechanics to not have to know many different manufacturers' equipment. And then we try to consolidate equipment between departments or find multi-use vehicles and kind of right-size or reduce our fleet as much as possible. And this is an example of how we've done that in the past. This is our swap loader. You have one body with many different, or one chassis with many different body styles. So we don't have to have a separate dump truck and a separate flatbed. We have a swap loader with a dump body and a flatbed body. Again, we always look for the lowest cost that meets the city's needs. We try to take advantage of bulk purchasing whenever possible. That's either through the state contract or one of our many interlocal purchasing agreements. If we can't do that, we prepare our specifications and solicit bids, and sometimes there's only one manufacturer, particularly if we're trying to standardize our fleet, and then we bring a sole source resolution to council and ask for authorization to purchase off of sole source. So here's the list of proposed replacements and expenditures for 2017. You'll see that several of them are and under the comments it says rebudget from 2016. That's where we took a look at it and said we can extend the life another year. So let's not replace it just because we have the money authorized. We don't need to replace it yet. So we're looking to replace those in 2017. The police van and the 2 Vactor trucks were actually ordered in 2016. We know on the Vactors we're not going to take delivery until 2017, so we actually have to purchase the funds, because we pay once we get them, for expenditure in 2017. The jail van may be here by the end of the year. We're not sure, so we're going to ask that we budget for that purchase in 2017 as well.
So when you say rebudget, are we just carrying it over? The money was there and you intended to expend it in 2016. It didn't get spent. You got another year out of it. It's carrying over into 2017.
Well,
Is that a correct statement?
technically, and Patricia can correct me, as I understand it, we have to actually rebudget that expenditure, but you could consider it a carryover.
So it was
Same
accounted
dollars.
for.
It's the same
It was
dollars.
accounted for in 2016. Okay.
Yes.
And do you normally, I guess I didn't not pay attention, is not the right word. The police stuff, that wouldn't fall into the police budget?
not for a replacement.
Okay.
If they wanted to purchase an additional vehicle to the fleet that they already have, that would fall under the police budget. What you see in the police budget is the contribution line to the 502 fund
Okay.
for replacements. And then I wanted to point out, Chief Merrill also talked last week about putting money aside for eventual replacement of his bunker gear. We're asking in this list for $10,000 to replace some of his bunker gear. I think the other significant thing on here is we've got mapping equipment and software. We are hoping to move towards a GIS-type mapping program with that. The list for 2018 is significantly less because we don't have those 2016 rebudgeted or carried over items. And there's nothing on there that you won't see before we actually make the purchase. And that's it for 501 and 502. Are there any questions?
Does council contribute to 502 in any way?
For your technology, your hardware, computer hardware and software. Okay, so the next item is Fund 510, which is our shop facility fund. And the shop facility includes the cost for operations and maintenance of our public works facility, the administrative staff, Sandra Rich, other operations manager, an admin assistant, our facilities maintenance worker, and myself are part of that administrative staff. The overhead for operating the facility, our motor pool, those are the cars that people can check out to go to a meeting or a class. And then engineering, which is in the 51020 section of the 510 budget. The costs are distributed amongst all of the public works divisions for the public works facility. And then engineering is distributed amongst the public works divisions that receive services from engineering, as well as some goes to development services for development review. And you'll see in those budgets, there's a line item transfer out to the 510 fund. We're requesting some staffing changes in 2017. One is to reclassify an administrative assistant to a senior admin assistant, reclassify the budget and purchasing coordinator to centralized purchasing and contract coordinator, and reclassify a civil engineer 1 to a certified stormwater manager / development review engineer, and that's in response to the required low impact development standards that we're going to have to be adopting by the end of the year. These changes are necessary to more accurately reflect the job duties and responsibilities that these employees are currently providing for the city. So it's not really new. It's putting them where they actually belong for the work that they're doing. Oh, Jim.
When you reclassify, let's say, the administrative assistant and promote them to senior administrative, are you going to replace the first one?
No,
Okay.
no new staff, just different titles.
And so, I'm sorry. So the reclassification, you said one was more accurately reflect job duties for the LID requirements. So specifically on that one, what do they do differently? What are the job requirements? What's changed?
Well-
I'm assuming senior means more money too. Without having seen the line item in the budget.
For the senior admin assistant, yes, she's actually supervising someone now. So there's a change in her job duties.
So actual change in the job.
Yes, change in duties and responsibilities, so we need to make that reclassification to reflect that. And then for the LID, there's a lot of knowledge regarding low-impact development. You've sat in meetings with Brad. There's a lot of training and requirements that go along with that. And there's going to be a lot of additional review and public education on that as well. So it's very different. So we do have some capital outlay requests for our shop facility. The first one is under the minor equipment line item, and that's to purchase a network printer for $5,000. We're asking for $15,000 in professional services to have a facility assessment done, and that would be for all city buildings, not just our shop facility. Rich, do you want to talk about what they look for and what kind of report we're going to get from that?
Yeah, they just do an in-depth review of the building itself, structure, roof, and everything, and they look at the condition, and they kind of just put a rating on the condition of that building when it comes to furnaces, plumbing, and that type of stuff. Main things are roofs and that type of things like that, and then they put a condition on it, and then they give recommendations on what maybe improvements they need, and also a time frame. And this is going to help us, like for budgeting, kind of like equipment rental, that we can start putting money away for some of these, and we know that a roof is going to be due to be replaced in a couple of years because of the condition it is, and then we can plan for that better and just get a good across-the-board look at all of our buildings.
Have we ever done that before?
No.
No.
So who does that?
I'm looking at, we're looking at a consultant that's through, we have a maintenance, building maintenance program called Facility Dude Maintenance Edge. And they have some people that we got a quote from that do that type of stuff. And then that can actually be brought right into that program too. And then we can build on that program to do our capital program with that and things like that. But it just gives a good inventory, and it just gives a good line of assets that we have, how many furnaces we have and what condition they are. So I've gotten one quote on that right now. So
One last question, I guess, at this time. Is that a 10-year lookout? Do they go into the future?
yes,
with,
they do.
How far, do you know?
Well, they basically have to set kind of a benchmark and then go from there and just go in. Like a furnace has a 15-year lifespan. They kind of look at the industry standards and they go out that far to when it needs to be replaced. Roofs can be, that's kind of depends what type of roof you have and that type of stuff. And painting, that could be 5 to 6 years and that type.
The shop facility include the fuel depot? You
Yes,
need
it
to
does.
do maintenance on that?
Yes, it does. And we put money into the 502 fund, the equipment replacement fund. We contribute to that annually for eventual replacement of that facility. So this next item, we're asking for a van and sedan to be added to the motor pool. So this is one of those where it would be in addition to the fleet. So we're asking for it in our operating budget instead of coming out of the vehicle replacement funds. We've had many times over the last few years where there have not been vehicles available for people to go to class or go to meetings, and then they have to use their own. So we're asking to increase our fleet by 2, a van and a sedan. We're also asking for an aerial lift for the shop facility, $12,000, and then we're asking for $25,000 to start a project to begin putting solar panels on our facility to help reduce our energy costs.
Does it ever make sense, from a liability standpoint, do we always provide a vehicle, or would it not make sense to reimburse people? Whatever we're at, 52 cents a mile or something, would it be more cost effective?
It's the liability, you hit right on it, the number one liability.
Yes, it's,
It's
we ask
like
someone-
giving them a vehicle that that they can use first before they're using their personal vehicles. And plus our cost is definitely going to be less than that 54 cents a mile. Because they're actually basing it, I believe, on a just one type of a vehicle. It's not based on all of the types. And ours, like our Priuses, we've had them for probably 10 years now, and we're still at 40-some thousand miles on them. I mean, that right there will lower your cost significantly versus someone
Right, but you just
using
said
their own.
something, if we've got a Prius that has 40,000 miles at the current rate of 52 cents a mile,
Ours is lower than 52 cents though. If
But let's say we paid someone 52, we would have paid out $20,000 for those 40,000 miles. That's less than purchasing a Prius, is it not? Except for the liability concerns. If I was to amortize
yeah, but then
out-
you have to add on fuel and all that too. It's just not the purchase
There's,
of the
there's
vehicle.
also a couple other things that we need to consider. Our travel policy does not provide for reimbursement if they are utilizing their own vehicle in town. So if they're running to a meeting in town, they don't get reimbursed for that. There's also, it may be something that we would want to talk with Nikki Esparza about, the liability and making sure that people have the appropriate insurance if they're in their own vehicle doing city business. And many times, we want them to show up in a city vehicle that is marked with the City of Oak Harbor logo when they're going to somebody's home or something like that.
Can I add on to something? From an individual department perspective, it's more cost effective for us to share that vehicle, because if for the reimbursement, then that travel cost rests within each of the individual departments. And it's hard to stretch those travel dollars to cover all of the things that you're trying to accomplish for training for your staff. So if we share a vehicle, the overall cost to the city is going to be less, because otherwise we'd have to budget more within each of the departments for those reimbursement costs.
And put to dollars, it costs $4 a day for them to rent a car from us. If he sends someone to, I don't know, wherever at 54 cents, it's coming out of his budget at a higher cost than it would just be renting one for us for $4 a day.
Here's another perspective. We have an employee that walks to work, has for 8 or 10 years. And so if he needs to go to a meeting or to a job site or anything like that, how does he get there?
Right, I don't, it's not all about money, but I'm just saying, to use that logic, if you took, let's, 2 vehicles for each 30,000 and give each of the departments a share of that 30,000, is that a better use of the dollars than the reimbursement? But it's not all about money. I understand you want people to show up in a city vehicle, or you have cases where someone may bike or walk to work. I just wanted to ask the question if,
Run the numbers, I don't have an answer.
I wouldn't get too far in the weeds on that one, just a question, thank you.
We currently have vans and sedans in our motor pool, isn't that correct?
We have one van and some sedans.
Yeah.
But again, police use them to go to training, fire uses them to go to training, all the staff checks them out to go to training, and then we have many employees who need to run out to a job site or visit a customer in the field or go to a meeting off island or at Island County or something like that. And then in 2018, our capital outlay requests include extending the concrete pad that we park our large equipment on, our garbage trucks and that. And then we're looking to purchase and install a security system at the Public Works facility. We have a lot of expensive equipment there. Our fuel island is there, and recently people have been found wandering around our facility that are not city employees after hours. So we would really like to get a security system installed.
Is it gated?
It's gated.
And so someone's sneaking in.
They jump
Yes,
the
they
fence.
jump the
or they
fence.
cut the fence.
I have a question. You're asking for $100,000 for a security system.
Yes.
What in the world? Are
Well,
getting for-
it's security cameras for the facility, the entire shop facility, the buildings, that can also look at, view all of the equipment, and particularly the fuel islands. We've had people come in and siphon gas from us. We've had things stolen. We certainly don't want anybody tampering with our fuel island.
The only reason I'm asking is we've been to some city conferences where they've had people displaying security equipment, and they're competitive, and they have some pretty sophisticated cameras these days. I understand that, but that just seems high to me. I mean, we've got one facility out there, and I think the cameras that I've just briefly looked at look to me like they're pretty sophisticated to do like fronts and backs of the buildings. And it just seems like $100,000 is high. But my recommendation would be that we shop around.
Well, we would. This item would require us to develop specifications and go and seek formal bids. So this is a budgetary estimate. It is not a guarantee that we will spend that much money. We would have to go to bid because it's over $30,000, and our policy requires us to go to bid.
Your security system's more than cameras, though.
Yes, it
You
is.
have to have cameras, you have to have the control system, you have to have the computers, and because it's way out there, you're gonna have some way for those pictures to get to the police department so they can monitor it too. So there's a lot more in that $100,000 than we've talked about.
Okay, so that ends the presentation on the 510. Are there any other questions about that? Okay, onward to Solid Waste Fund, Fund 403. This is really, really simple. There really are no significant changes, except we're asking for $10,000 to purchase, more than we normally spend, to purchase two 20-yard roll-off containers to replace some that are extremely old and worn out. Island County is not going to be increasing our tipping fees. We don't have any other large projects. We have nothing else going on other than purchasing two new 20-yard roll-off containers.
What do we do with those?
We haul recyclables, like glass.
Glass, and we have typical nickel glass coming in that goes in there, and then there's some
Metal.
yeah, metal and that type of stuff. And we have some for garbage too, that's bulk garbage. You know, like when we pick up things that are too large to put in the garbage trucks, we have to put it in that, and then that gets hauled down to Island County.
The tipping fees, I remember when there was $85 per ton,
Yeah.
went up 105. What is it now?
I don't know off the top of my head, but Island County has not raised it in at least 6 to 8 years,
Yeah,
maybe longer.
they haven't increased yet. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So that's it for solid waste. Any other questions? Next fund is Fund 404, Storm Drain. So we've got some staffing requests in the Storm Drain Division in response to the new LID requirements, and as a requirement of our NPDES permit, we do have to provide public education and outreach. We've talked about the need to do more inspections with LID once that code is implemented. So we're requesting to reclassify one stormwater specialist 2 to a stormwater inspector / educator to help us meet those new requirements. And then we're proposing to backfill that position with a new stormwater specialist. So we would be adding one employee for this. Yes.
So on the scale, does a storm drain specialist 1 start out less than, is 2 a promotion? Is that?
Yeah, so this is a good time to talk about this because we're going to talk about it later in this presentation. The way that our structure is set up in Public Works, we have specialist 1s and specialist 2s, and it's been set up this way, I think, since 2004 when we had a classification study, and our Teamsters contract currently reflects this. So someone who is a 1, once they meet the qualifications and certifications required to become a 2, they get promoted to be a 2. And this is important because we're so thinly staffed. Really, we have very small numbers of staff in each Public Works division. We need everybody to be able to do all tasks. We're not a large organization where we can have 3 2s and 5 1s, and the 1s have to wait and go through a competitive process. They all need to be able to do all of the tasks. When you have 3 employees and a lead supervisor, everybody has to be able to do everything. So that's why it was set up that way in 2004. And when we get to water and wastewater, this is going to be important, and I'll show you why. But there's not much of a difference when somebody gets a promotion. They get an increase in pay of 3%, and then they top out at a higher amount. So they don't automatically get a big jump in pay. They go up one step of 3%, and then they have more steps till they reach the top of that pay scale. We're proposing to purchase some stormwater software, which will help us with our reporting requirements for our NPDES Phase 2 permit. That's $22,000, and it really isn't a significant change, but I just wanted you to know how much our NPDES permit costs us annually, $50,000. For professional services, we're requesting $75,000 for a consultant to study the Friend Marsh to determine how much, if any, additional stormwater we can put into the marsh. And then it's time to update our stormwater comprehensive plan. We're maybe even a little bit behind on that, and that's about $150,000. That's needed, just very similar to our transportation plan, our water system plan, our sewer system plan. It's just one of those that we have to update every 6 years or so. We would like to construct a detention pond near well site 10, which is up off of 6th. About $75,000, and then we have not yet finished the Scenic Heights Outfall project, so we need to budget the money in 2017 to complete that project. And we're estimating that to be $200,000. And that's it for storm drain.
Excuse me.
Go
The
ahead.
stormwater comprehensive plan, how long has it been since we've,
It was 2008 was the last time we did that, and we
So
actually
8
have
years.
a request for qualifications out, and we're reviewing those as we speak to get started on it.
is there sort of a requirement, I know like with the comprehensive plans and, that you're required to do one so often, or is that just on our judgment to do that?
It's I don't know if it's required per GMA, Growth Management Act, but it's good practice because we base our capital improvement program on the findings of that study.
And so indirectly, you can say that there's that requirement because we have an obligation to provide the necessary plan for and provide the necessary infrastructure to support that growth under GMA. And the way that we learn what projects we need are through these comprehensive planning efforts. So we get the list of storm drain projects from the storm drain comp plan. That's what makes its way into the capital improvement plan.
I'm just going back through the slides, I'm noticing a trend and I'm curious. There's dollar amounts for pretty much everything in here except every time we talk about a staffing change.
Because I don't have those numbers from finance yet.
Okay. All right.
We don't fill those in. That comes directly from finance.
Okay.
And a question about the storm drain. Slide number 34 said, under professional services, the Friend Marsh drain studies 75,000, stormwater comp plan is 150,000, and then the capital outlay improvements, construct detention pond 75,000, and then Scenic Heights outfalls 200,000. Where's that money come from?
It comes from our stormwater rates.
Or do we have funding in there now?
I'm not quite sure.
I don't have it on the top of my head, but I'll look into that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I guess the short answer is that we don't have funding in there, then we wouldn't do the project until we do.
That's correct. We have to, when we bring a contract forward to council for approval, we have to show that we have the money to actually do the project. And that's why we have the sign off from city administrator and the finance director on our agenda bills to help ensure that we're not asking for something that we don't have money for.
Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but correct me if I'm wrong. If it's something that the city felt strongly enough about having completed, it could come out of the general fund.
Yes, that's true too.
I mean, that's not necessarily common practice, but
That's what Dr. Merriman talks about, loaning from one fund to another fund. Is that what you're referring to?
No, so the general fund can contribute to any fund in the city, but the utility funds can't contribute to the general fund. And then equipment rental in the past has made loans to other departments, short-term loans like the marina.
The auditors have been getting kind of twitchy about that, though, the last few years. And so Dr. Merriman tells us that that's a practice he would like us to not even contemplate.
Okay, water is Fund 401. And some things we need to think about in water are some proposed staffing changes, or not even proposed. They're going to be necessary staffing changes, really. There's a real potential that Rich is going to retire here in this next budget cycle. And with his loss, we're going to have to figure out how to replace the services that he provides. Some of those duties will be assigned to others. One of those others would be a new water supervisor position. So we would create a position, a structure in water similar to what we currently have in wastewater, where you have a supervisor and a lead, and then the operators or the specialists. So we're proposing a new water supervisory position. We're going to restructure, and I'll get into that a little bit because it's the ones and the twos issue. And however, the number of authorized positions will go down under the proposed new structure. So currently we have the ops manager, Rich. Some of his duties will be assigned to another operations manager. We're proposing a new water supervisor position. We have a lead water specialist currently. We're proposing that position be maintained. We have a lead water services authorized but unfilled, and we would eliminate that position. We have 5 water specialist 2s authorized. They're not all filled. And we're proposing that we reduce that to 4 water specialist 2s. We currently have a water specialist 1 authorized. We would eliminate that. And then part-time seasonal is authorized. And the note, new employees start as a specialist 1, especially in water, because they need to learn our system. After they've been here 2 years and they know our system, and if they've achieved all of the required certifications, they get bumped up to a 2. And it's very important that they become 2s, because that's when they can perform what we call the after-hours standby duty. So if there's something that happens after hours, they can take the phone call and they can respond, but they have to be a 2 in order to do that. So that's why I kind of want to eliminate the 1 positions from our organizational structure, with the understanding that we may have someone come in as a 1, but the goal is for them to become a 2.
What is the normal, if someone's motivated and takes the certifications, the track, the timeline from a 1 to a 2?
Well, they're required to work within our system for 2 years to become a 2. But they can meet all of the certifications. We may have somebody come in with all of the required certifications on day 1, but just not know our system. So we would go from 8.83 full-time equivalents authorized to 6.75 FTEs authorized. So in 2017, we'd like to purchase some new desks for the water offices. They're probably 40 plus years old or so. They're lots and lots of years old. Professional services and analysis of our Altfield booster pump station surge analysis. And we'd like to have a condition assessment on our 24-inch transmission main. Machinery and equipment, security camera for our water reservoir, and a leak detection device for $22,000. And then in 2018, a consultant to help us analyze our emergency supply. We have a very long list of proposed capital projects in 2017 and 18. These are consistent with what is in the adopted capital improvement plan. There's some main replacements. We need to replace our well 9. It's failed. The county is doing a project at the intersection of Regatta and Crescent Harbor to modify that intersection. That will require us to lower our water main. We need to do some telemetry upgrades. And we'd like to construct an intertie between our 24-inch transmission main and our 10-inch transmission main out by Deception Pass that would allow us to backfeed some of our customers out there in the event we needed to do that. And we need to start planning for the East Side Reservoir demolition. We don't have a need for that East Side Reservoir anymore. That's the one across from Olympic View.
Yes.
The Regatta Crescent Harbor water main improvement upgrade lowering, is that like a Sharp's Corner kind of deal? We don't have any control over that, it's just that they make those changes, we have to comply and integrate with them?
That's pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Right.
And what is a telemetry upgrade?
So you want to go ahead,
Yeah,
Rich?
the telemetry upgrade is we have remote telemetry out at all of our sites, and and all that information comes into our.
I'm sorry, what's telemetry?
It's like monitoring the pumping schedules. It's monitoring even some of the alarms and everything, and it has alarms, like if a pump fails, it sends alarms. It comes into our public works facility, and then it also calls out the duty people that have on the weekends so they can be watching what's going on. And it's basically controlling the system. It's a computer that controls a lot of our pumping schedules based on levels of our tanks and everything. What we're doing is we have to do some upgrades. A lot of the equipment was put in back in the 90s, and you know how technology is. They don't support, the technology's moving so quickly, they don't support a lot of the old technology. So we're having troubles with that, and they're also looking at improving our communications by going with radio instead of phone lines. Right now we have dedicated phone lines, and they're very expensive. You end up having 2 phone lines on there, and it costs for rent. Every month we pay rent. We're going to go with radio. We put radio in on the North Reservoir, and it's been working really well. That communication is free. I mean, we basically install a radio. So that's the small amounts, the improvements we've got.
Thank you.
So, well number 9 replacement, are we gonna just drill a new well, then have a new well?
I believe we're gonna have to, because the condition of the existing one is in such a state that we'd have to start over.
Is that just for emergency, or is that?
Yes.
We don't use
Yes.
it in our system, okay.
But
And
we
it-
also want to do that analysis too, so we know that that's the best place to put it again, and also for other future locations if we have to put in some other, we know that emergency water supply with the growing community is becoming more and more important. So we're looking at getting that one up and running, making sure we're putting it in the right place, and then also others in the future.
2 more questions. East Side Reservoir, is there a long-range plan for that property once the reservoir is demolished, or does that become,
Not yet.
that's currently owned by the water department, I would assume, since the...
Right.
That's something we need to look at. It could even be owned by the general fund, because that may have been purchased
It's old.
before the water fund even existed.
1950s when that was installed. The only thing we're gonna have to do there is probably put a pressure reducing valve station, which could be in the right of way. That might not affect that property, but that's the only thing.
Or it could just be an easement on the
Yeah,
property,
it could be
something
an easement, so-
reasonably small.
Could be available.
Councilor Servades?
Thank you. Talking of studies, the 24-inch transmission main, $200,000, what would we get for that if we approve it and budget for it? What are these?
Well, a lot of it is that transmission main was put in 1973, and
And how long is it? How many miles?
13 miles.
13 miles.
13 miles of water main, and what we're looking at is a lot of things. We're looking at condition, internal, external. Also, maybe mapping it out a little bit better. There's been so many changes that, we need to look at that. But it's mainly the condition. Take a good, really good look at condition, so we know in the future what to plan for if we have to do replacements and things. It's critical, and that is.
We can't just put the money towards this, obviously that's probably gonna be a small chunk of
Yeah.
whatever it takes to replace it.
This is so that maybe we can do some preventative work to keep from having to replace it as soon. And then, it's the main water source from Sharps Corner all the way to the Altfields booster station. So it's pretty extensive. It's been a long time since we've had an opportunity to take a good look at it.
And built when?
1973 was when that was put in jointly with the Navy.
It was in the comp.
So that's getting old
Right.
with that type of a pipe.
And that budget number came out of our water system comprehensive plan that was prepared by Gray and Osborne.
What is the lifespan of a main like that, a water main?
Depends on the material. The line that's
Made out of, don't you?
It's
Yeah.
ductile iron, and that ductile iron is really good pipe, but it is conducive to having corrosion issues. Depends what the soil it was put in. So that's probably the worst, that's the thing you really want to look for. We did have a failure on it, just up from Sharps Corner. We had a pipe that actually failed.
Next to the cemetery there.
Next to the cemetery up there, and we lost about 4 lengths of pipe there, and it failed. It actually rotted through. So those things get you concerned, and but I don't know. It's hard to say a lifespan. Sometimes they say 70 years, sometimes they say 50 years. It depends on the conditions it's put in.
You said it the opposite way I was thinking. 70 years.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things we need to check, and that would help us prepare for the future as well once we know more about the condition of it. And actually, Rich brought up a good point. There's some places where the location isn't as well known as it should be, and so we're going to go out pothole and locate it and GPS it in as well.
Any other questions on this slide? 2018 is a little bit lighter. We will, in 2018, demolish the East Side Reservoir. We have some more telemetry upgrades. And then we budget $500,000 for steel or AC pipe replacements. There's no specific location, but we have areas where we just start to spring leaks. And so we want to have some money available to go out and replace those sections as needed.
As an example on that one, isn't that what we pulled from to do Northeast 4th?
Yes, when we replaced the water line in Northeast 4th recently, that's the line item we used.
Before we get completely off that subject. There was a lot of news about the lead pipe back east in, I can't remember the city. We have tested our water on numerous occasions and we have no.
We test every 3 years. We follow the state's requirements for that. We've been doing really well on that. We did investigations years ago and haven't had any problems about that.
I had a chance to tour the water facility in Anacortes, where they do testing 24/7. Do you do the same thing locally here?
We're continually monitoring chlorine, and we continually monitor fluoride. Those are the two things. We add the fluoride to the water, and chlorine is monitored from Anacortes, but we want to know what the chlorine residual is coming in. All of our other tests are done on a daily, monthly, basis, whatever the requirements from the state is. But chlorine is monitored and fluoride is monitored daily. And that's part of that telemetry that we were talking about. That's showing us what that level is at all times. And it's
So we
continuing.
have really good tap water.
Yes, yes.
I have more on the. Is it too early to plan for relocation of the water pipe at the Sharps Corner when DOT put that runabout in that area?
That's a really good question, and we need, I went to the open house, I don't know who, actually I went to the one in Anacortes, had talked with them previously to that even about what's going on at the intersection, because that concerns us. Until they have a little bit more refined design on it, it's hard to say what that's going to be. The last time we talked, it looked like they were going to avoid a meter vault that we have there that'd be costly to move. But there's still potential that we'll have to move a pipe there once they get a little bit further along.
Yeah, and if it does, it'd be like the one relocation by Campbell, like somewhere over there, it costs the city more than $1 million to relocate. So it's good to have a good planning.
Yeah, we're watching it very closely.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions on water? Wastewater. So wastewater fund 402 covers all of our collection system, over 70 miles of pipe, 11 remote lift stations, and then we have our one major, what we call the diversion lift station down in Windjammer. It also has covered our treatment, which used to be the RBC and the seaplane-based lagoon plant. The RBC plant is not operational anymore and is basically gutted. And so now it just covers the seaplane-based lagoon plant. Wastewater, the new wastewater treatment plant is in a separate fund, the construction of that. Once that construction's completed and it's fully operational, it will come back into 402 for operations and maintenance. We are getting ready for the new wastewater treatment plant in this 2017-18 budget. This is for the operations side of it. We are going to need to restructure our staffing due to the requirements of the new wastewater treatment plant. An MBR plant is considered what they call a Group 3 plant, so the chief operator has to have a Group 3 certification through the state. Anybody that works after hours then needs to have a Group 2 certification. Our current plants are Group 2 plants, and those working after hours only need to have a Group 1 certification. So we are going to have to restructure. We are going to have to add additional staff. Carollo has gone through a very in-depth analysis of what it's going to take for, and it's pages and pages and pages of tiny numbers and letters in a spreadsheet with all of the tasks listed, how much time is spent daily, weekly, quarterly, annually for all of the different tasks to maintain an MBR plant. And they've come up with about 9 FTEs. We're going to start with 8 FTEs. Yes?
Not 9 new.
No, not 9 new, total. So, and I've got another chart that shows kind of where we are authorized and where we're going. So, we've got to work through that restructure. In 2017, we'd like to hire 2 new operators. We need that time for training. As the equipment gets installed, they're going to be getting training from the equipment manufacturers. They're going to go and train at other facilities. We're requesting $25,000 in our travel line item for our operators to go and job shadow other treatment plant operators at MBR plants so they can kind of get some hands-on learning, because this is an entirely new process to them. As we begin operating the new wastewater treatment plant at the end of 2018, we need to move away from the wastewater lagoons on the seaplane base, and our contract requires that we leave a plant that is operational and permittable to the Navy. So we're asking for $125,000 to have someone come in and help us analyze what it is that we need to do before we can turn that back over to the Navy. We know there's some work that needs to be done on that outfall into Crescent Harbor, and we know that we have to remove biosolids. There may be some other things that need to be done. Then we've got some capital outlay that excludes the wastewater treatment plant. This is In our collection system, there's a section of main that needs to be replaced on Southwest 6th Avenue. We'd like to get that designed in 2017. There's a section of main in Southeast Ely Street that has a belly in it that needs to be replaced. That we'd look to actually do that construction work in 2017. And then the lid on the Pioneer Way lift station at the end of Pasek. That was put in the 40s, and it really is deteriorating and should be replaced as well.
By that you mean the concrete and not,
The concrete.
not like just a metal lid.
Yeah, it's a concrete lid. So this is the proposed staffing changes. We have a wastewater treatment plant supervisor authorized. We want to keep that. We have a lead wastewater treatment plant operator. We want to keep that. We have a lab coordinator. We want to keep that. We currently have authorized 1 operator 2, 1 operator 1, and 1 operator in training. And you don't ever want to have somebody just be forever in the operator in training. And we really need to have everybody with the new plant get up to the 2 level, because that's what's going to be required for them to do standby duty and work after hours. And with the wastewater treatment plant, we have to perform tests and work every single day of the year. So we really need to have everybody at the 2 level. So what we're proposing is, and this comes out of the Carollo analysis of our staffing needs, 5 operator 2s. So a supervisor, a lead, a lab coordinator, and 5 operator 2s. And again, we may advertise for 2s, somebody with a 2 certification. We may not get anybody. We may get somebody who comes in with a 1 certification and then has to become a 2 within a certain period of time. This is one of those challenging fields where it's hard to find qualified people.
Given the conversation earlier about how tough it is to get new employees, is there anything in your budget that would allow, in case we can't do it when this place is ready to start operating, is there any money in there for a consultant to come in and run it for a while until we get fully manned? I'm not talking about a company necessarily, but maybe a person or 2.
We don't have any funds set aside specifically for that, but if we have vacancies that have not been filled, those funds would be available to put towards that. I will say wastewater might have a little bit better shot at finding at least OITs or operator 1s. There are some community colleges, Green River Community College, and even Skagit Valley College over in Mount Vernon has a program for wastewater treatment. They just started that one over in Skagit. And so I'm really hopeful that we might be able to get some interest and find some people. They may not come in as 2 certified, but they could become 2 certified.
So the net of that is adding 2.
Yes, adding 2. We'd go from 6 to 8.
Okay. And in 401, it looks like water we freed up 2.
Yes, but they're different funds, so we can't spend wastewater money or water money
No,
and
I'm just looking at the
wastewater.
overall
Yes.
bottom line. When we finally
Yes.
see it, I'm trying to interpret what we're going to see.
But on those same lines, water and wastewater are all out of the utility fund or enterprise fund, right?
They're each a separate enterprise fund.
Yeah, but they're
Yes.
enterprise funds, so ratepayers.
Ratepayers,
It's all
yes.
basically
Yes.
coming from ratepayers' money.
And this staffing level has been included in the rate analysis
And then what?
for wastewater.
And then the net is adding 2 for this specific slide, but you're adding 2 also that are at a higher level.
Yes, they
Like you're
will.
taking away the OIT and the 1, but so you're adding 2, but 2 are also, and I know you don't have the numbers for what that cost as far as a salary expense to the utility fund, but I would imagine it would be some.
Yeah, there will be an increase.
Okay.
Any other questions on this? So in 2018, we would add that last wastewater treatment plant operator 2. So we're going through a process right now to hire a 1 who will become a 2, because we lost an employee through retirement. So we're going to bring in a 1 who will become a 2 this year. And then in 2018, we would hire the 5th wastewater treatment plant operator 2. When we start this plan up, we're going to have employees there 24/7 for a while. Do you know how many months?
3 at least.
At least 3 months. So we're budgeting for $20,000 in overtime expenses for that. Again, we're budgeting $25,000 for operators to travel to other plants to job shadow and learn about the MBR process. And then we're estimating the repairs and modifications that need to happen to the wastewater treatment plant at the lagoon to be about $612,000. So.
That showed when I saw that $20,000, I don't think that's nearly enough for what you described that we've got to do. I mean, if you're gonna have overtime for 3 months, are you really comfortable with it? No, I'm sure.
Well, they're gonna overlap shifts as well, so it's not like, we'll manage it as best we can. But
Yeah.
there'll be times.
At least you can go get some more money. Thank you.
So between water and wastewater, we're up to 50 grand for people to travel in shadow,
For wastewater,
but it's also in water.
no.
Sorry. It is
Two.
wastewater.
2017 and 2018.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Joe. Any questions on wastewater operations? Okay, Joe's got it from here.
Okay, for the next 54 minutes, I'm just teasing. This is all stuff we've talked about just a week ago. So I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna do pretty much a cursory overview. This is a slide for the wastewater treatment plant that I showed at the last workshop. Total estimated project cost of $122 million. And this breaks it down into the different components. We've created Fund 422 to help track all these expenses and the revenue and funding sources that we have, so we can segregate that out from other sewer operations. What we're looking for, at least at this point, is for 2017, $64 million, and in 2018, $10 million. And that is funded through, this is the same slide just copied over in different format, but we have a whole host of different funding sources to help cover those costs. And the two that kind of will float around a little bit as we get to the end of 2018 is going to be the bonds phase 2 and the rates SDF funds. So as we get as we get closer to knowing what the true number is, those will balance out a bit. That's short and sweet of that one.
You went over the funding the other day, the system development fund. Well, tell me again, you said, well, no, what did you say to some of the numbers as we get closer?
Well, we have either paid for, bid, or contracted for roughly 83% of the cost. There's still the remaining 17%. And if things go well, maybe the cost will come down a little bit. So those last two funding sources will balance out once we know what the true cost is. That's what I meant by that, sorry. All right, the next one is the Windjammer Park Integration Plan Fund, Fund 422. This
Oh,
used
it's
to-
Fund 325.
Fund
Sorry.
325?
Yeah.
I got the wrong one on there. I'm sorry about that. But what this is, this is a remnant of another fund that we had, isn't it?
It's a remnant of the Windjammer Fund from many years ago when we had the Roger Brooks study, and money was set aside for improvements to Windjammer Park. And so we're using that Fund 325, the Windjammer Fund, for this project.
So what we're intending to do, and we've talked about this a little bit here and there, is in 2017 go through the design and permitting process, and then start construction right about the time frame the treatment plant is coming online. So our goal is we looked at a couple different options, and we thought continuing with Corollo for this effort, since it's so directly related to the treatment plant, was the best route to go. On my map here, this is the level that we're at. I've just sketched out kind of a diagram of what we believe we're going to do. The green hatch, clearly what's around the wastewater treatment plant. The treatment plant, the wastewater 422, I guess you could call it, is going to pay for that work. And then and there's also some wetlands adjacent to it that need to be improved. And then repair of the RV park, meaning that, restoring, smoothing out the soil that's there and making it usable again as park area. I keep walking myself into that hole. We're not putting the RV park back, but we got to restore the property that we disturbed. The blue area that I've hatched on there is the additional improvements we would like to do to create phase one or implement phase one of the park plan. So that would be all the hardscape and landscaping that goes along with that. There's also, I'm going to point at the screen over here. These two little features here as part of our SEPA. This is part of the SEPA. We're required to do something about the restrooms and the kitchen facilities. So the wastewater treatment plant, that fund would pay for the replacement of those facilities, and likely that we'll, if we have enough material, we'll likely push some of the material over in this area as well to start the first steps of creating that park improvement. We've looked at, rather than the original plan showed stopping right about here with the first phase, it seems like it's a little bit incomplete, so we're looking into the possibility of extending it clear down and down to about where the sewer dump station is that's down there, installing the roundabout feature and the parking, all of that crescent-shaped parking that was proposed in the original plan. And if funding allows, we'd replace, put 2 Portland loos or something similar down in that area. And by doing so, that would eliminate the need to repair the existing facilities. There's some, we talked about it when we were talking about the park, but there's the existing restrooms and showers that need new roofs, and the shower coin-ops have been monkeyed with. And so if we're able to, we'd like to install some features down here so we don't have to repair the ones that are in the park. Might as well, if we're going to move forward with the park plan, let's put the money in the right places.
That's new to me. The part of the RV along that street.
It is something we're still exploring. I didn't want to get too far into how much of the first phase we would do until, quite frankly, after we award the contract for the next GMP tonight. So I'm still working on the scope of services with Corollo and MWA and Greenworks to do the work, and we'll size it appropriate to the funding we have available.
So if you did it the way you're showing us right there now, that would eliminate the entire RV park?
That's correct.
And so you guys have made that decision yourselves?
No, we haven't made a decision on it one way or the other than it's included in the park plan that.
Yeah, but the way I understood that was about phase 4 on that side, initially, the last time we heard it at council.
It's
I think it was phase 2
or 3.
2 or 3, Mayor.
Yes.
4 is,
You need this.
yeah, I think 4 is this one here. 3 was this piece. 1 got us to here, and I think this whole part here was identified as 2.
Yes.
But Joe's right. I think All it's doing is looking right now about the potential of capitalizing on having that improvement all done at one time. But obviously, as we've said all along, each of these pieces requires not only additional input from the public as we work through the design, but obviously needs council approval as well before we would, move beyond the talking about it stage.
Okay, so today we started talking about it. Councilor Wasserman?
Yes, when you say, you're talking about coming down and putting in the restroom, some type of restrooms. By the way, I hope Hank is learning a lot. Is he on his tour now?
Not yet, next week.
Oh, okay. The restrooms down lower there, so not having to do the proposed repairs on the old restroom and showers. Does that mean that those facilities down lower would replace that old building of restrooms? So
Yes.
could it be torn down? I mean, when you say don't improve it, I'm thinking it's gonna sit there and just continue to fall apart. And are we gonna just ignore it? Or does that mean if we go with this, put those restrooms, tear down the old one?
Yes.
Would that
We would
kind of
like
be
to.
the
Yes.
plan? Because I'd hate to see us put something and say, okay, that means we don't have to repair it, and then have it sit there and be a, eyesore or hazard.
Correct.
Yes.
I was trying to find the presentation. I know you guys presented June, July-ish on the Portland Loo. Did we make any decision? I know Hank's looking at a possible alternative.
We haven't made a
We
decision
didn't-
one way or
did
the other.
council formally endorse those, or,
No, we're looking for the most cost-effective way to address having restrooms in the park.
That meet the current requirements of gender neutral, crime prevention through environmental design, those kinds of things.
Has there been any discussions about moving the RV park?
I haven't had any further discussions on that.
If the discussion comes up and the, based on polls that I've taken from the RV park for the people who come here, if you're not gonna move it to the Friend property, don't bother. You'll never fill it up if you move it anyplace else. That's the only reason those RVs are here, is because of the location of it. So if you could go across to the Friend property and put one in, that would be good, but any place else, they won't.
I think our primary focus so far, Mr. Campbell, has been on identifying those pieces of the park work that absolutely are tied to the construction of the clean water facility, and those pieces immediately outside of it, because what we've been trying to do is capitalize on the council's direction, to keep the momentum up. I think that was something that came out of one of the workshops. Also because we know that there's a substantial lead time in getting the design work done, and so that it dovetails in the construction. So we're not in the part of thinking about where might the RV park be, because our focus has been much closer to the facility itself.
I did have a slide here about potential funding sources. We talked about how the sewer fund, the areas that were hatched in green in the previous slides, items that are clearly the responsibility of the sewer fund. That's one source. We have the Windjammer Park Fund that's been around for a little while. And we're looking to go towards after REIT funding to help, as well as park funds, 126 and 127. The general fund via sales tax from the treatment plant construction. And then we're clearly going to seek grants, and I believe Nicole Tesh is already chasing one down, and because the plan has been approved by RCO is acceptable, so we can chase after RCO funding. So we're going to seek out support from different local organizations to help with the park, as well as we have done in the past. That's the last slide, isn't it?
Yep, that's the last slide.
Joe, you have 41 minutes left.
Would you like me to go back a couple slides?
No,
I saw some scared faces. Why is that?
Strange, or out of the ordinary. Seems like it shouldn't be there. Just dial 911 or send it out.
Yeah, there you go. You know what?
So that's the end of the budget presentation.
Yeah, we have,
Councilor Sabides?
oh,
Good.
I was gonna say, Public Works has one more division that is scheduled for a later workshop, and that's streets. We didn't get through streets today.
And this might be as much a question for the mayor as it would be for Patricia. When do we expect to see then some of these numbers fleshed out a little bit more?
My goal is at the workshop at the end of October to present you with the draft budget and then go review, kind of give you a look at it. And then on the first meeting in November to present the draft budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so if you'll recall, when we started the discussion about budgeting, I think it was at a department head meeting, I asked for organizational charts. So I'm expecting to get an organizational chart, an updated organizational chart, every department. So I'm not just picking on you guys. And then I personally would like to see, and I assume we have, an equipment list. That's pretty available, yeah, if I could, yeah, okay. Yes, Councilor Sabides?
I wrote this down to start. The equipment rental policy that you addressed from 98, do we need to
Yes.
revisit that? 18 years old?
It's working really well. I mean, it's not very detailed. It's a general policy of who belongs there and what we do and what services we provide. So no,
You may want to consider expansion of the items that contribute to replacement. If there's other facility items outside of Public Works, we use it to put money aside. We started that when the bond was paid off for our facility. We knew that we were going to eventually have to replace roofs and HVAC and seal our parking lot. So we just continued with contributions towards that, not the full bond amount, but towards eventual doing that. Might help when we get this facility analysis of all of the city facilities. We might want to look at something like that.
For us, it's been good for like even streets with signal lights and those flashing school zones. Those can be very expensive, replacing batteries, and there's lights that go out after so many years. And we can put a little bit of money away, and then that helps if we have an emergency. If one of the lights fail, we can have the money in there for that, and we can use it, and it works good. And it kind of stabilizes my budget a little bit because I put a little bit in there, and I've got it there, sitting there for it. It gets used because we know that there's going to be work that needs to be done on them.
Total sidebar, Dan, I forget which street I was on, and one of those, the vertical placard, half of one of them was out, and how often do we go around and test those? And
Well, we inspect them every week.
Oh.
Sometimes they work in some, we're having some issues with those. There's moisture issues, and it happens when the temperature changes. We've been having some condensation going there. And then you can look at it one time, it works fine, and then the next week it's
Okay.
not working, and then it's back again. But we're trying to work on those issues.
And if you're interested in learning more about equipment rental, we can make it a topic when we get back to regular monthly workshops. If you'd like, we can bring that policy forward.
Seeing no other, I guess we'll adjourn at 4:23. Thank you very much.
We got through a lot.
Thank you.